Whether it's for better or worse, it is really hard to argue that Critical Role has not had a massive impact on the Dungeons & Dragons community as a whole. These nerdy-ass voice actors, as they like to call themselves, have turned what was a one-time basement-dwelling hobby into something of a more mainstream one. And I'll be the first to admit that Critical Role is a huge part of why I am so invested in Dungeons & Dragons, and honestly, to a large degree, probably why I even have this channel. And while the effect and the impact of the show hasn't necessarily always been positive, I do think that over the last 7 years that it's been going on, we are certainly at a point where the pros are vastly outweighing the cons, and to be honest, are probably in something of a Dungeons & Dragons renaissance right now. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about Critical Role, what do you think its impact on the community has been, and be sure to subscribe for more Dungeons & Dragons content. For those of you that don't know, Critical Role is a Dungeons & Dragons live stream game which has been taking place more or less every Thursday since 2015. It started out as an ordinary home game for Pathfinder 2nd edition, but transitioned into D&D 5th edition shortly after its release and when the stream went live around early 2015. And as they say, the rest is sorta history. D&D has exploded in popularity, in no small part thanks to Critical Role, which is now in its 3rd campaign. It has spawned countless other live streams. It has had multiple books released based on the content of the show, including the very recent tal'dorei Reborn, as well as the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. It was the highest grossing Twitch stream of 2020. The Legend of Vox Machina is now a full-on TV show on Amazon Prime, and they have donated tens of thousands of dollars to various worthy charities through the Critical Role Foundation. So what's the downside then? Well, one of the biggest criticisms that has been levied against the show is this so-called Mercer Effect, which in essence is when someone's only real exposure to Dungeons & Dragons has been Critical Role, and then they show up to play for the first time expecting that the game is just going to play just like what they've seen on the show, when the reality is likely to be pretty far from that. This has caused endless stories of people being completely turned off from the game, or even creating toxic environments where players and DMs are sort of bad-mouthing each other because they're not creating the type of experience that they're expecting to see or to have based on what they've seen from Critical Role. And the kind of big and sad irony of the entire thing is that's the total opposite of what this game and what the show is entirely about. D&D went from being a relatively niche hobby to honestly pretty freaking popular in a really short amount of time, with countless people being brought in towards the game as a result of watching Critical Role. So it's really not all that unreasonable for them to expect that this is just what a game of Dungeons & Dragons looks like. They're very likely not thinking about the sheer time investment that someone like Matt has devoted to his craft, the amount of training and his experience as a voice actor. Really, they're just seeing this group of people having a ton of fun with a super engaging story, and they kind of want in, and it's really hard to fault anyone for that. All that being said though, I really do think that calling it the Mercer Effect is pretty disingenuous, because in all honesty, it is much more of a Critical Role effect. The entire game is absolutely not just him. The players themselves are just as iconic and talented and trained as Matt, and in reality, these are the people that are eliciting these incredible emotions from you and creating these wonderfully memorable moments. No spoilers, but honestly, I still cannot think of the Fix Him scene or the What is my mother's name scene without getting complete chills, and honestly, Matt had very little, if anything at all, to do with those. The reality is that Critical Role is much more of a TV show than it is a game of Dungeons & Dragons, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've said it before, but the first campaign of Critical Role is probably one of my favorite pieces of general media that I have ever experienced. The way that this game and these actors lend themselves to telling these incredibly engaging and collaborative stories is so much more evocative and powerful than just about anything that I've ever seen before, that it really, really resonates with me, as I'm sure it obviously has for millions of others. If you are getting into Dungeons & Dragons as a result of watching Critical Role, then we are thrilled to have you join this wonderful community of incredible and talented people, and sincerely hope you enjoy yourself. But please do not expect that your first session is going to look anything like Critical Role, because it isn't. If that is the type of game that you want to have, that is amazing. Strive for that, work towards that. It might take you multiple years, it might even take you many different groups to actually get to that point, but eventually you just might arrive there. But on your journey in getting to that point, give your fellow players and DMs the respect that they deserve, and play and learn and grow together and enjoy the game for what it is. A little bit earlier, I did mention I think D&D is in something of a renaissance right now, and obviously a huge part of the reason why that is Critical Role. For all the negativity that the Mercer Effect might actually have had, it has in very large part helped redefine what Dungeons & Dragons and what RPGs actually kind of can be if you want them to be. The type of RP heavy game that they play on Critical Role is absolutely not for everyone, and there is nothing wrong with that. But I do genuinely believe that a large proportion of the people who are playing the game right now, in this moment, because of Critical Role, probably do actually want their games to look like that, at least to some degree. There is something that is really exhilarating and cathartic about playing a character and interacting and engaging with this world that you and your friends all collectively share between you that is so much more than just make-believe swords and spells. By far, the most memorable moments that have ever come from my games have been from RP between players who I would never have imagined acting outside of the context of D&D, and honestly, that includes me. The perception of the game is changing every single day as people are realizing that this is such a positive and welcoming community, and honestly, I think we really need to embrace that and thank the amazing folks at Critical Role for ushering in this new era of D&D. Whether you like the show or not, honestly, it's all the same now. D&D has cemented itself in the mainstream, and it's really up to us as a community to grow and shape this game into the direction that we want to see it grow. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Critical Role, the Mercer Effect, or even about the future of D&D in general, and be sure to check out some of the linked videos over here so you can learn a little bit more about maybe how to get better at RP or being a better dungeon master. But otherwise, until the next one, take care.